On the afternoon of the 27th of March, 2009, Sandra skipped out of her front door with a smile on her face. She was wearing her favorite pink Hello Kitty t-shirt and black leggings. Her mother watched her go. She had no idea that was the last time she would ever see her daughter alive. Sandra Cantu was born on the 8th of March, 2001, in Tracy, California, a quiet city of about 78,000 people, roughly 60 miles east of San Francisco. She had just turned 8 years old. 8 years old. She lived at the Orchard Estates mobile home park with her mother Maria, her grandparents, and her 3 older siblings. It was a tight-knit little community. Everybody knew everybody. Neighbors looked out for each other. Parents felt safe letting their children play outside. And Sandra was the kind of child that lit up every room she walked into. She was not a quiet, shy little girl. She was the opposite. She was loud in the best possible way. She was giggly, full of energy, always moving, always talking, always pulling someone into whatever game she had just invented in her head. People in the trailer park adored her. She loved to sing, not just hum quietly to herself, but really sing, arms out, performing for anyone who would watch. She loved to dance. She loved coloring. She loved helping her grandparents in the garden, following them around, asking questions, getting her hands dirty in the soil. She was in 2nd grade at Melville S. Jacobson Elementary School. Her teachers knew her as a bright, social child. She had friends everywhere she went. At 8 years old, Sandra Cantu had already figured out something many adults never learn, that life is better when you share it with people. She was not a perfect child. She was a real one. She could be stubborn. She had opinions. She wanted things her way sometimes. But that spirit, that strong, joyful, unstoppable spirit, was exactly what made her so easy to love. Every single day, Sandra would go outside to play. That was just who she was. It did not matter what the weather was like. It did not matter if she had homework waiting. She wanted to be outside, running around the mobile home park, knocking on doors, finding her friends, being alive in the way that only children know how to be. Her grandfather had recently installed a security camera outside their home. It was not because anything had ever happened in the neighborhood. It was just a precaution, something to make the family feel a little safer. That camera would later become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case. On the 27th of March, 2009, a Friday, Sandra came home from school and kissed her mother hello. She played at a friend's house for a while. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she came back home. Then she went back outside. She skipped down the path away from her house, her Hello Kitty shirt bright against the afternoon light, her dark brown hair bouncing as she moved. The security camera caught it all. Sandra skipping. Sandra happy. Sandra completely unaware. That footage, those few seconds of a little girl skipping down a path, is the last known image of Sandra Cantu alive. She never came home that evening. By 7:53 that night, her mother Maria called the police and reported her missing. Search parties formed almost immediately. Police dogs, helicopters, equestrian teams. Hundreds of volunteers walking the streets of Tracy with flashlights, calling her name into the dark. Missing child posters went up across the city. Her face, those dark eyes, that wide smile was everywhere. Over 1,500 tips came in from the public. The whole city of Tracy was holding its breath. And somewhere close, much closer than anyone wanted to believe, was the person responsible. Someone who had smiled at Sandra's family. Someone who had lived just steps away from their front door. While hundreds of people searched the streets of Tracy for a missing little girl, one person already knew exactly where Sandra was. She was not out searching. She was not worried. She was watching. Melissa Huckabee was born on the 23rd of February, 1981, in Orange County, California. From the outside, she looked like someone you could trust completely. She was a young mother. She was a Sunday school teacher. She was the granddaughter of a Baptist pastor, a man of God who ran Clover Road Baptist Church, just a few addresses away from the Orchard Estates mobile home park where both she and Sandra's family lived. She was soft-spoken. She smiled easily. She talked about faith and community and children. Nobody, not a single person who knew her, saw what was coming. But underneath that surface, Melissa Huckabee's life had been quietly falling apart for years. She grew up in Southern California and spent her adult years bouncing back and forth between Tracy and Orange County. She struggled to hold down a steady job. She had a history of difficult relationships. At some point, she married a man named Johnny Huckabee, and together, they had a daughter named Madison. The marriage did not last. According to her ex-husband Johnny, Melissa struggled deeply with her sense of identity. He later told ABC News that she suffered from depression and had serious issues with how she saw herself. She was prescribed medication. She saw doctors. After the divorce, Melissa was granted full custody of Madison. Johnny largely disappeared from his daughter's life. Melissa was left raising a 5-year-old girl alone, with little financial stability, moving in near her grandparents in Tracy to survive. Court records show that in 2006, Melissa was convicted of petty theft in Los Angeles County. Then in late 2008, she was arrested again, this time for burglary and petty theft in San Joaquin County. A judge reviewed her case and ordered a mental health evaluation. Based on that evaluation, she was placed on 3 years of probation and required to participate in a county mental health program for 1 year. She had been formally diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. She was enrolled in that court-ordered mental health program at the exact same time she took Sandra's life. In fact, on the 3rd of April 2009, just 1 week after Sandra disappeared, Melissa failed to appear at a scheduled progress hearing for that mental health program. She never showed up. Nobody followed up. And yet, despite all of this, the failed jobs, the court cases, the mental health diagnoses, the instability to her neighbors at Orchard Estates, Melissa Huckabee looked perfectly normal. She was friendly. She waved hello. Her daughter Madison played with the other children in the park, including Sandra. The 2 little girls were friends. That friendship gave Melissa natural, easy access to Sandra. Sandra trusted her. Sandra's family trusted her. That trust would cost everything. In the weeks leading up to March 27, investigators would later learn that this was not the first time Melissa had done something dangerous to a child. In January 2009, just 2 months before Sandra's murder, a 7-year-old girl from the same mobile home park went missing for 4 hours. When she was found, she was taken to a hospital. She was under the influence of a powerful muscle relaxant. A police report was filed, naming Melissa Huckabee in connection with that disappearance. No arrest was made. No serious action was taken. The warning was there, written down, filed away, and ignored. By the 27th of March 2009, Melissa Huckabee had access to alprazolam, a strong anti-anxiety medication, commonly known as Xanax, which was later found both in her home and in her purse. Toxicology reports would confirm that this same drug was found in Sandra's system after her death. She had the drug. She had access to the child. She had a location, her grandfather's church, just steps away, quiet and empty, on a Friday afternoon. At 3:54 inches the afternoon, the security camera outside Sandra's home captured one final image. Sandra, skipping down the path, moving in the direction of Melissa Huckabee's trailer. 8 minutes later, Melissa's SUV was captured on camera, driving away from the mobile home park heading toward Clover Road Baptist Church. Sandra was never seen alive again. March 27, 2009, started like any other Friday. In Tracy, California, schools let out. Children ran home. Parents started thinking about dinner. Nobody knew that before the sun went down that evening, an 8-year-old girl would already be gone. Sandra came home from school that afternoon and kissed her mother hello. She played at a friend's house until around 4 o'clock. Then she came back home briefly, just long enough to drop something off. Just long enough for her mother to see her face one more time. Then she went back outside. She was wearing her pink Hello Kitty t-shirt and black leggings. She was skipping. At exactly 3:54 inches the afternoon. The security camera her grandfather had installed outside their home caught her on video. She was moving down the path away from the house, in the direction of Melissa Huckabee's trailer. Happy, alive, completely safe in her own mind. 8 minutes later, at 4:02, that same camera captured Melissa Huckabee's Kia SUV pulling out of the mobile home park, driving in the opposite direction, toward Clover Road Baptist Church. Prosecutors believe Sandra was inside that vehicle. The church was quiet that Friday afternoon. Melissa's grandfather was the pastor there. Melissa taught Sunday school there. She knew every room. She had keys. She had access to the kitchen. Inside that kitchen was a silver rolling pin. According to the prosecution's timeline, Sandra was killed at Clover Road Baptist Church between 4 and 6 o'clock that same evening. The San Joaquin County pathologist, Dr. Bennett Omalu, later determined that Sandra died from homicidal asphyxiation. She was strangled with a piece of cloth that had been torn and knotted into a noose around her head. Toxicology reports confirmed that alprazolam, a powerful anti-anxiety drug, was present in Sandra's system. She had been sedated before she died. The same drug was found in Melissa Huckabee's home and inside her purse. The rolling pin found in the church kitchen later tested positive for Sandra's DNA. It had a bent handle and what investigators described as a bloody smudge on its surface. Sandra did not die quickly or peacefully. She was 8 years old and she was alone and she was afraid, and there is nothing more that needs to be said about that except that she did not deserve a single second of it. After Sandra was dead, Melissa placed her small body inside a black Eddie Bauer suitcase, her own suitcase. Then she drove to an irrigation pond on Bucketty Road and Whitehall Road, north of Tracy. A retired United States Marine and his wife were near that pond between 5:30 and 6 that evening. They later told police they saw Melissa Huckabee there. They saw her SUV. They noticed she seemed distracted and in a hurry. When the man approached her, Melissa told him she had stopped because she needed to use the bathroom. She drove away. By 6 o'clock that evening, Sandra's body was at the bottom of that pond. By 7:53 that night, Sandra's mother Maria called the police to report her daughter missing. The very next morning, Melissa Huckabee sent a text message to Maria Chavez, Sandra's mother, telling her to inform police that something had been stolen from her trailer the previous afternoon, around 4 o'clock. She was already building her cover story. The following day, during a candlelight vigil held for Sandra at the mobile home park, Melissa approached police and FBI agents. She was agitated. She was crying. She was hyperventilating. She told them she had just found a note lying on the ground. The note read, "Cantu locked in stolen suitcase thrown in water on Bucketty Road and Whitehall Road witness." The misspellings were deliberate, an attempt to disguise her handwriting. It did not work. Police had over 1,500 tips pouring in. Hundreds of volunteers were searching the streets. Search dogs, helicopters, equestrian teams, combing open land. The entire city of Tracy was desperate to find Sandra. They were looking for a monster. They assumed it was a man. Nobody was looking at the grieving, crying woman standing right in front of them, handing them a note she had written herself. On the 6th of April 2009, 10 days after Sandra disappeared, farm workers draining that irrigation pond found a black suitcase submerged in the water. Inside was Sandra, still in her Hello Kitty t-shirt. The city of Tracy shattered, and the investigation, which had been searching in all the wrong directions, suddenly turned and looked towards someone it had never suspected. When Sandra's body was pulled from that irrigation pond on the 6th of April 2009, the investigation changed completely. No more search parties. No more missing child posters. Now it was a murder investigation, and the clock was running. Tracy police had received over 1,000 500 tips since Sandra disappeared. They had interviewed hundreds of people. They had executed more than 10 search warrants across the city. The FBI had been called in to assist from the very beginning. Early in the investigation, the FBI built a profile of the suspected killer. They described the person as a white male, between 25 and 40 years old, with a criminal history involving sexual assault or child pornography. Everyone was looking for a man. That assumption was about to be completely destroyed. Investigators began reviewing every piece of evidence they had collected. They went back to the security camera footage outside Sandra's home. They watched it again and again. They noted the timestamp 3:54 p.m. Sandra skipping down the path. They noted the next timestamp 4:02 p.m. Melissa Huckabee's Kia SUV pulling out of the mobile home park, heading toward the church. 8 minutes. That was all the time that had passed between the last sighting of Sandra alive and Melissa driving away. Then investigators looked at something else. The suitcase. The same day Sandra disappeared, Melissa had called the trailer park manager to report that her Eddie Bauer suitcase had been stolen. The body was found inside an Eddie Bauer suitcase. The woman who reported losing a suitcase was the same woman who had conveniently found a handwritten note telling police exactly where the suitcase containing the body was located. As Tracy Police Sergeant Tony Sheneman later noted publicly, investigators found it deeply suspicious that out of every single person living in that mobile home park, it was Melissa, the one woman who had reported a stolen suitcase, who just happened to find a note about that exact suitcase being used to hide a child's body. Then the retired Marine and his wife came forward. They had seen Melissa at the pond. They recognized her face from television coverage. They told police she had been there between 5:30 and 6 on the evening Sandra disappeared. They described her as distracted and hurried. That placed Melissa at the exact location where Sandra's body was dumped, at the exact time the prosecution believed the body was disposed of. Investigators executed a search warrant at Clover Road Baptist Church. Inside the kitchen, they found the silver rolling pin bent handle, bloody smudge on the surface. It tested positive for Sandra Cantu's DNA. The case was built. On the 10th of April 2009, police asked Melissa Huckabee to come to the Tracy Police Station voluntarily. She drove herself there. According to Sergeant Sheneman, she walked through the door, calm and composed. Then she became emotional. Then calm again. Then emotional. She went back and forth for hours. Then she became what Sheneman described as simply resigned. Just before midnight, Melissa Huckabee was placed under arrest. She was charged with murder, kidnapping, rape by instrument, and lewd and lascivious conduct with a child under 14. Because of the special circumstances attached to the charges, she faced either the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. The community of Tracy, which had spent 10 days searching desperately for Sandra, was stunned. Not a stranger, not a predator hiding in the shadows somewhere across the city. Their neighbor, their Sunday school teacher, the mother of Sandra's friend. In the days following her arrest, Melissa was taken to a hospital after she swallowed razor blades in what appeared to be a suicide attempt. She survived. The legal process moved forward. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty. However, after lengthy negotiations, a plea agreement was reached. Melissa Huckabee agreed to plead guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping. In exchange, the rape charges and the additional drugging charges involving a separate 7-year-old girl and a 37-year-old man were dropped. On the 14th of June 2010, Melissa Huckabee stood before Judge Linda Loftus in San Joaquin County Superior Court. She made a tearful statement. "I still cannot understand why I did what I did," she said. "This is a question I will struggle with for the rest of my life." She offered no motive. Not then, not ever. Judge Loftus sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sandra's family sat in that courtroom and heard every word. They had waited over a year for that moment. It did not bring Sandra back. Nothing ever would. The courtroom went quiet when the sentence was read. Life in prison. No possibility of parole. For Sandra's family, it was the only justice the law could offer. But justice and healing are two very different things. And for the people who loved Sandra Cantu, the healing would take far longer than any court case. Sandra's mother, Maria Chavez, never fully recovered from the loss of her daughter. How could she? No parent is built to survive something like this. She had watched Sandra skip out the door that Friday afternoon. She had waited by the phone that night. She had lived through 10 days of desperate searching, only to receive the worst possible news at the end of it. At the sentencing hearing, Sandra's family sat together in that courtroom and listened to Melissa Huckabee say she did not understand why she had done what she did. They had no words for that. Sandra's aunt, Angie Chavez, had spoken to media in the days after the arrest. She described the family's reaction to the rape allegations as complete devastation. "I'm in shock," she had said. "The whole thing is unimaginable." That word unimaginable became the word that surrounded this entire case. Because it was. It still is. The city of Tracy carried its grief publicly and quietly at the same time. This was a community that had come together in extraordinary ways during the 10 days Sandra was missing. Thousands of people had walked the streets. Strangers had printed flyers and knocked on doors. People who had never met Sandra Cantu had wept when her body was found. And then they learned who had done it. That second blow, the revelation that the killer was a neighbor, a familiar face, a woman who had stood at that vigil crying and handing police a note she had written herself, cut the community even deeper than the first. Trust is a fragile thing. Once it breaks in a place as small and tight-knit as Orchard Estates, it does not come back easily. But Tracy chose to heal through Sandra, rather than despite her. Her elementary school, Melville S. Jacobson Elementary, created lasting dedications in her memory. The school built the Sandra Cantu Playground, a place where children could run and laugh and be exactly what Sandra had always been. They created Sandra's Cottage. They installed Sandra Cantu, buddy benches, throughout the campus, designed specifically to make sure no child ever had to sit alone and feel invisible. The buddy benches carry a simple idea: if you sit on one, other children know to come and include you. It is the kind of idea Sandra herself would have loved. She was the child who always included everyone. She was the one who knocked on every door and pulled every friend into her games. In 2011, a community organizer and relative of Sandra established the annual Tracy Celebrates Children event. Every year since then, Tracy has held a free citywide day of play, open to all children and families in Sandra's honor. Local sponsors and volunteers come together to make it happen. It is loud and joyful and full of exactly the kind of energy Sandra carried with her everywhere she went. The community chose to remember her laugh instead of her loss. That is not easy. But it is right. As for Melissa Huckabee, she remains in a California state prison today, serving her sentence of life without the possibility of parole. She has never publicly explained her motive. The prosecutor in the case, Deputy District Attorney Tom Testa, speculated that she killed Sandra for attention, that her deeply unstable sense of identity and her diagnosed mental illnesses combined into something catastrophic on that Friday afternoon. But speculation is all anyone has. Melissa Huckabee looked into a courtroom full of people whose lives she had destroyed and said she did not know why she did it. Maybe that is the truth. Maybe it is not. Either way, the answer died somewhere inside her, and Sandra's family has had to find a way to live without ever receiving it. What this case reveals is something deeply uncomfortable. The danger was not a stranger in the dark. It was someone with keys to the church, someone with a friendly face and a daughter the same age as the victim, someone enrolled in a mental health program that failed to catch what was building inside her, someone who had already harmed another child just 2 months earlier and faced no real consequences for it. The warning signs existed. They were documented. They were filed away. They were filed away, and an 8-year-old girl paid for that failure with her life. If there is any lesson Sandra Cantu's story demands we carry forward, it is this warning: signs are not paperwork. They are children's lives. They deserve to be taken seriously every single time. Sandra Renee Cantu was born on the 8th of March, 2001. She loved to sing. She loved to dance. She loved Hello Kitty and garden soil and making people laugh. She skipped everywhere she went because walking was simply too slow for someone with that much joy inside her. She was Tracy's angel. She was a daughter, a granddaughter, a sister, a friend. She was 8 years old, and she deserved a whole lifetime more. The world is less bright without her in it. Sandra, you were loved completely. You are remembered every single day. And the children who sit on those buddy benches and are pulled into someone's game because of you, they carry a piece of your spirit forward. You never stopped including everyone. And somehow, even now, you still are.